Did you know that the human brain is deeply connected to the Sefirot of Chochma and Binah? In this explainer, we will focus on the interaction of Chochma and Binah, and this precisely explains how the left and right hemispheres of the human brain interact with each other to understand the world. Please note that all the ideas we will introduce are fully explained with source material in my latest book, Shomer Emunim, The Introduction to Kabbalah. Click on the link in the description below for details about my book. In the last explainer, we introduced the 10 Sefirot processes. In this explainer, we will focus on the interaction of just 2 of these processes, of Chochma and Binah, which capture the intellectual process. Details about the other Sefirot are provided in my book. So, what are Chochma and Binah? They are 2 very different ways of intellectually relating to our world. Chochma is a flash of inspiration, a sudden burst of comprehension when an idea becomes clear, an aha, I've got it moment. It is for this reason that the Kabbalists associate Chochma with the right brain hemisphere and also with vision, which primarily functions in the right brain hemisphere. When we look at something, we see the whole picture instantly, in one go. We take in all the details of the image simultaneously, as in parallel processing. We look at the whole. Binah, on the other hand, is an analytical process which is performed by breaking down and separating an idea or an entity into its component parts to understand how it is constructed or functions. It is a linear process that follows a necessary sequence of logic to build understanding. The Kabbalists therefore associate Binah with the left brain hemisphere and hearing, which primarily functions in the left brain hemisphere. Spoken words are heard linearly to build up an idea, as in sequential processing. At any instant, only a part is heard. Chochma is the initial bestowal of the germ of the idea, the Chasadim, whereas Binah is the analytical breakdown and constraint of the idea, the Gevurot. So, Chochma and Binah are polar opposites of each other, the parallel whole versus the sequential parts. And it is against this background that the Kabbalists make seemingly strange and cryptic statements. They say that Chochma and Binah are inseparable and always unified with one another. In particular, the ancient Kabbalah work, Shevirat makes the following cryptic statement: acquire Binah with Chochma and acquire Chochma with Binah. The Kabbalists are telling us that in order to understand anything, we must have the correct combination and balance between Chochma and Binah. For example, it is through this balanced combination that a tree can be seen within a forest. When we look at a tree, we separately identify it from its surroundings in a forest using the separation of Binah. At the same time, we also see it as a whole entity using Chochma, within which its own components, such as its branches, leaves, roots, etc., fade into the background and are not related to when focusing on the tree. If when looking at the tree in its forest, we only used Binah and no Chochma, then we would only see the branches, leaves and roots as separate entities and would not even see the other trees there at all, never mind the forest. On the other hand, if we only looked at it with Chochma and no Binah, not only would we be unaware of the branches and leaves, but even the tree would blend into the forest and would not be viewed as a separate entity from that forest, and the tree itself would also not be separately seen. It is only the correctly balanced combination of viewing the tree in the forest with both Chochma and Binah that enables the tree to be related to as a separately identifiable entity within the forest. Another example is with hearing a spoken sentence. For the sentence to be understood, a combination of 2 processes must happen. Each part, each word, needs to be separately understood, Binah. In addition, at the same time, the context of the sentence as a whole needs to be understood to convey the meaning of the words, Chochma. This can be seen from the following 3 sentence examples, where the word spring can only be understood retroactively when looking at the larger whole of the sentence. The spring followed a harsh winter. The spring burst out of the mattress. The spring flowed with water. Without both Chochma and Binah processes working together, we cannot interpret the meaning in what we hear. So we can see that the concepts of Chochma and Binah are inseparable, and one cannot exist without the other. Even though vision is generally associated with Chochma and hearing with Binah, nevertheless, vision and hearing each require both processes of Chochma and Binah to be properly understood. Several decades ago, the scientific world caught on to the differences between the right and left brain hemispheres. Yet these claims of differences were found to be too general and rigid, and not necessarily supported by reality. However, recent research on hemisphere differences has, with more measured precision, reinstated the credibility of these differences, explaining that the human brain is not a single brain with two parts, but rather is comprised of two separate brains, the right hemisphere being the primary seat of holistic thinking, but not exclusively so, and the left hemisphere being the primary seat of linear thinking, also not exclusively so. Remarkably, this research has provided deep insight, fully corroborating the ancient Kabbalistic concepts of Chochma and Binah. In summary, every intellectual process is a precise balancing of the Sefirot of Chochma, a holistic understanding, and the Sefirot of Binah, a linear understanding. Chochma and Binah are inseparable processes that are both required to have any understanding of the world around us. We now understand what the Sefer Yetzirah said: acquire Binah with Chochma, and acquire Chochma with Binah. In our next explainer, we will introduce the concepts of Tohu, Shevirat HaKeilim and Tikun. Before you go, don't forget, click on the link in the description below for details about Shomer Emunim, the Introduction to Kabbalah, which contains comprehensive explanations and sources for everything in this explainer series. So, thank you for listening, and looking forward to seeing you in explainer number 7.